I think there's three things that you have to have a successful business. And you have to have these three things. You've got to have guiding strategies, guiding principles. So like your purpose statement, mission, vision, culture, you got to have a North Star. You got to know where you want to go. The second one is systems and processes. So standard operating procedures. And the third is people. So the people doesn't include just your employees. It's your banker, it's your accountant, your suppliers, vendors, contractors, your team, whether it be internally or externally. So going back to those guiding principles, this is why that's so important.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Tell-All podcast, where aspiring entrepreneurs come to hear the motivational and inspirational stories of those who've come before them. I'm your host, James Makudo. And today our guest is Michael Morrison, who is a husband, a father, a small business coach, and entrepreneur who has amassed over 20 years of practical experience solutioning some of the many challenges that small businesses face. He's the founder of BOSS, BOSS, which is the Business Ownership Simplified for Success, which is a coaching outfit that puts small businesses on a growth trajectory by helping them find their clarity and purpose. He's also the founder of Comtech, Design, Print, and Mail, a small business strategic marketing partner, which he ran from 1999 through to 2019. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, James.
So I'd like to take a step back to 1999 when you started Comtech. What was the motivation behind starting that business?
Well, I was single at the time, didn't have kids, and I was tired of working for the man, as they say. So I thought if any time's a good time, now would be the best because no one's depending on me or my income. As well as prior to that, I had a lot of self-doubt, was value or I didn't find my worth of value. And so it was also to prove something to myself.
When did Boss and some of your other ventures come into play?
Well, I started my first business in 99, like you mentioned. And back then, for the younger generation, the internet was not what it was today or what it is today. And so for most business owners or anybody, if you wanted to learn something, you had to go to the library. And when you're trying to run a business, you don't have time to go to the library. You don't have time to read. I mean, there weren't YouTube videos to, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there. It was, you got a book and it was usually thick. And then reading it and trying to retain it and implement it just wasn't applicable at the time. And so there was a lot of learning those early years on my own. And over time, so I started that business for the freedom and to prove something to myself as well. And so that was the idea behind it.
I mean, I think it's almost safe to say, just thinking about how long you've been in business and the various ventures that you've started, I think it's safe to say that you epitomize what a serial entrepreneur is. But I'd be curious to get your thoughts on what it actually means to you to be an entrepreneur.
Wow. It's a great question. I think for number one, the freedom, being an entrepreneur, being able to set your own time clock of when you work. I'm not a big believer in work-life balance, but I do believe there's an integration between the two, especially when you have kids. I've got two boys now. One is adulting, as we say. The other's in 8th grade. But and they understand that, one of them, he's in middle school still. He plays sports, and most middle school sports are in the middle of the day, the school day. The high school is usually what's in the evenings, Friday night lights and all that stuff. But just being able to attend his basketball games or whatever it is so valuable to me. And so I think being an entrepreneur, for one, is the freedom, and that encompasses a lot of things. That could be the freedom of time. I can't imagine, here it is, almost 25 years later, I can't imagine going and asking someone permission to go watch my son play basketball or fill out a PTO form or something like that. It's just, that's foreign to me. And so you kind of get adjusted as an entrepreneur. It almost becomes, I was on a podcast earlier this morning, and it's almost contagious. There's just something about it that once you experience that freedom, and also the freedom of building your own empire if you want to build one, or your revenue stream, whatever it is. So I think just freedom for me would kind of wrap it up in a word.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think there's something to be said about just being present for some of the more personal commitments that you have. So, like you said, family, and really also not having to answer to anyone in terms of, like you said, having to ask for permission to go watch your kids participate in different sports. That's great. I'd like to delve a little deeper into Boss, your coaching business. I went ahead and looked up the definition for a business coach, and Google
Hmm.
returned. Um, it's a professional mentor who supports, educates, and motivates business owners. They provide recommendations for a company's vision, growth, and goals. Effective business coaches provide motivation, but also implement and prioritize strategies to help businesses grow. So, within that context, could you perhaps walk us through what your specific framework or the approach that you take when you go about helping small businesses? So, and not to put you on the spot here, but let's just pretend I'm Steve and I have a landscaping business, and
Yes.
I've hit that proverbial growth wall,
Hmm.
and I've come to you for some help. What does that engagement look like from start to finish?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, a business coach, I love that description that you read. A business coach is not someone to tell you what to do, but it's to help encourage, think differently, share ideas, be a sounding board, and all the other things that you read. And so when someone comes to us, the first thing we do, in fact, I have two businesses. One is Boss, which is kind of the a la carte of a lot of things,
Hmm.
where we can meet the business owner where they're at, whether that be they have limited resources. Some of the products and services we have at Boss are very, very affordable. And then I also have michaeldmorrison.com, which is Michael D. Morrison Enterprises. And that's where I work directly one on one with the business owner. So when somebody approaches me personally, the first thing I ask them is, "What's the challenge that you're experiencing?"
Sure.
Because what I found is I want to get an idea of what they think it is, because what they think it is, it's usually not that.
Right.
So the challenge that they're having or experiencing is usually a symptom of the root problem.
Hmm.
So I kind of want to get their idea, because that right off the bat kind of tells me if we can help them or not. If someone's already, let's say, a multi million dollar company, and they're looking to expand their C-suite team and work with their investors, that's not for me. So that's where I want to see where they're at and what their challenge is. And then once we discover that, like I said, we're kind of an a la carte, like a smorgasbord, where okay, we have online courses, we have a networking group, or we have mastermind groups, or we have a build your business masterclass. I mean, we've got 13 coaches on staff, but they're very niched in a certain area. So if you're having troubles with marketing, I'll bring one of those coaches into the equation. So the first thing that we do is assess kind of where they're at, and
Hmm.
then we have about a 20 question form that we kind of, what are you looking to achieve? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? The typical stuff. But
Sure.
and it kind of gives us a good idea of what they're looking for. And then we go back and we create a plan. So kind of a framework. What separates me, I feel, from most coaches is I've owned businesses. And for those that are looking for a business coach, I highly encourage you to ask, what businesses have you owned? How long did you own them? And what size were they? Because a lot of coaches out there have never owned a business.
Mm.
They're certified, they're kind of preaching from a book, if you will. And there's a lot of great business books out there. I love it. We all share some of the same frameworks, principles, things like that. But if you haven't walked in a business owner's shoes, when that business owner is experiencing a difficulty at home, say it's a marriage or their kids or whatever it is, they're bringing that to the business as well. It
Hmm.
affects it, like I said, it's all wrapped together. And so when we put together a plan, we start with what they feel is their biggest challenge, and we start there. So we kind of put a plan so that they see some immediate relief, right? Because that's, if I'm going to the doctor for pain, I want some immediate relief. In fact, um, our purpose statement says to be a voice of hope,
Mm.
right? For small business owners who are working hard and not getting anywhere. Okay, so that's our purpose. That's our purpose statement. That's our passion, similar to a doctor, like I mentioned. So when you go to a doctor, if you are in pain, when you leave that doctor's office, if they've filled out a little prescription pad and sent in, for a prescription, there's something about driving from there to your Walgreens or drugstore, whatever. You already kind of feel better because you feel like you have hope, right? You know, there's
Absolutely.
some relief coming. That's what we try to provide. And that's what, if you call a business coach or a mentor, if you're shopping for one, if you will, first, see if they've owned businesses. And secondly, after talking to them, do you feel some relief, some immediate relief? Do you feel some hope? Because that's what distinguishes a fit for you. All business coaches, including myself, I'm not a good fit for everybody. I mean,
Mm,
nobody is, so you got to find that fit, that relief, if you will. So we create a framework. So we kind of create here's a 90-day plan. And then we schedule a recurring meeting with the business owner. It can be at their place, online, if they're out of the state. We're in Oklahoma City. Or we have corporate offices here that we have meeting rooms of different sizes for, because some businesses, they have partnerships. So are we working with a 4-person business? They can come in this room right behind me. We have 4 chairs and whiteboard, TV, all this stuff that we need to coach and help guide the business owner. And then as we're going along, once they find some immediate relief after we've kind of, now we're not going to solve the problem, right? We're not going to, our coaches and myself, we don't say, here's what you should do.
mhm,
We say, have you ever thought about this? Do you think that would help? Because you are in the trenches day to day. We've been there. We've walked in your shoes. Here's what's worked for me. Here's what's worked for her. Here's what's worked for this coach and this other business. And we just kind of bring ideas to the table and help them self discover, because we want to help them learn to be more decisive, how to look for those other solutions that are out there. Because as business owners, or as a business coach and a business owner, I know there's not just one solution, right? There could be multiple solutions, and we just try to have to find the best one that fits. So after we've put together kind of a 90-day plan, and we found a time to meet, some business owners, they'll come to us and they only have the resources to meet maybe once a month, which is fine. They're kind of an
mhm,
early stage startup. They don't have much time to execute anything on the business anyways, because their focus should be sales until they get established. Others that are a little more established, we might meet with them biweekly. And then, kind of for those seasoned businesses, we work with them weekly. So that's kind of the schedule. And so we hit that 90-day, and then we kind of reevaluate. Then we set some targets, and then we start looking out further as far as, a 3-year plan, 5-year, 10, but it really depends on the season of business and life that they're in. A lot of times a business owner will come to us because we do life coaching as well. So
mhm.
we integrate both business and life because we know things happen in both places. And so, sometimes people come to us and we discover that it's something at home that they're having a challenge with. Like, like maybe they're having to cut back hours, or because their spouse or partner is fixing to leave them. And so we want to help kind of fix those problems up front. So then okay, how can we work less? Well, maybe we need to promote this person to run the operations,
Mhm.
you know, half a day on a week or whatever, so you can go spend time with your family, whatever it is. So we're very unique, very customized for the business owners. And I know a lot of coaching programs out there, they follow a specific framework, which is fine because they're great. Those are great too. But you just got to find what you feel is a good fit for you.
No, I love that. I mean, it's taking a holistic approach, to solving business problems, and how sometimes those challenges, may spill over into people's personal lives. I think,
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense really to see what the entire picture looks like before really figuring out how do we approach and conquer this challenge. No, that's great. So you alluded earlier, you mentioned that you may not necessarily be a good fit for everybody that comes to you. What Maybe a better way to phrase this question is, have you ever had any clients that you ultimately couldn't help after onboarding them?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a handful of those, and I will just boil it down. They don't want to help themselves. They don't want to put in the effort.
Hmm.
So a business coach doesn't do the work for you. The business coach, we have a session together, which is usually 60 to 90 minutes, and then they leave with action items. The ones that we can't help are the ones that come back and haven't done one thing, right? Because it's like lifting weights or anything else. If you're inconsistent, changes aren't going to happen.
Of course.
So for those business owners, we just can't we can't help them. until they're ready to get serious, as I say.
How can we get out of our own way? Like, I think, to your point, I think one of the biggest impediments is just being in our own way. So whether it's not doing the homework that you've been assigned by your coach or whatever it might be, um, would you say that maybe it boils down to circling back to what your why is? Like, why are you in business? Why are
Mm,
you actually doing what it
okay.
is that you're doing? Um, I'd be curious to hear what you think about that.
So I have, excuse me, I have a lot of angles for that question.
Hmm.
One of them is your, so I think there's three things that you have to have a successful business. And you have to have these three things. You've got to have guiding strategies, guiding
Hmm.
principles. So, like your purpose statement, mission, vision, culture, you got to have a North Star, right? So you
Hmm.
got to know where you want to go. The second one is systems and processes. So, standard operating procedures. And the third is people. So the people doesn't include just your employees. It's your banker, it's your accountant, your suppliers, vendors, contractors, your team, whether it be internally or externally. So going back to those guiding principles, this is why that's so important. I mentioned before our purpose statement. Now, we call it a purpose statement because that's what you can find on the internet. But we internally, with each business, we say this is really your passion statement, and it's who and why you serve. So the who for us, if you listen to ours, it's small business owners. So we've established that. The why is because they're working hard and not getting anywhere. Coming from experience of owning businesses, I feel their pain. I'm empathetic. So when I'm challenged, I go through the same thing, cyclical cash flow, or we might have a great month and then the next, and we just hired 5 new people. All of a sudden, the sky falls, right? So we
Hmm.
don't have any money. And we go through the same thing. Everybody does. So there's sometimes I don't want to get up, and don't let some raw personal development tell you every day is a great day. No, we all have bad days, right? So
Right.
when I am having one of those days, like I just can't believe everything's falling apart, we've worked so hard, I go back to my purpose statement. That's the inspiration. That's my why, because I know there's a small business owner out there somewhere that needs help. They need a voice of hope. They need some direction, guidance. They're about to walk off a cliff, walk off the ledge, as they say. And so that's my inspiration. And that's how we get most business owners to get started. So you always refer back to your why, if you will.
Sure, sure. And then just in the same vein, maybe we flip the coin over to the other side. What does your ideal customer look like? What's your customer avatar or client avatar? Who is that person?
So coming from the marketing world, one of my largest companies, we had about 70 plus employees, and it was a marketing company. And so I understand buyer personas, avatars, all that stuff. For us, it's a little harder because small businesses are always in a different season.
Hmm.
And when I say a startup business, most people would think like a brand new business, just getting their dipping their toe in the water of entrepreneurship. We work with businesses that are 30 years old, but they're still operating as a startup. We've got
Interesting.
some that come to us that are still doing what their grandpa did when he started the business. They're still using handwritten job tickets. They're not streamlined. They have zero processes. So it's a wide array. Instead of just saying like it's this type of business or
Hmm.
this size, there's sizes of all kind that come in that package. So they're stuck. They're out of bandwidth. The business owner is required to work in the business with the team, or the
Hmm.
business doesn't operate. They've run out of bandwidth, and so that could be a solopreneurship that uses contractors. That could be, I think our biggest company has well over 200 employees that we work with.
Oh, wow.
Um, so it really varies in size, but I'd like to say that it's a small business that's stuck. They're out of bandwidth. The business owner is required to be there, or the business doesn't function.
Interesting. How do you get your value proposition in front of these, I guess potential clients? What does your client acquisition strategy look like?
So we use several channels. Obviously, the number one is putting out good content, addressing their pain. We can do that through email. We can do it through social media. I'm very active on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to connect with me, I'm open to connections. That's where I personally engage. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well, but I don't engage myself as often on those channels.
Hmm.
But we put out good content and we just answer questions. So every small business has a different challenge. And if we hear someone address a challenge, that's how we write our next content. Because we're like, if one business owner asks that question, I know there's someone else out there asking that same question. They're just afraid to ask or afraid to
Absolutely.
reach out. And so, but once we get them to call, like that's our goal. Once they've called us, our closing rate is 90% because we've put out enough content that they feel that they know, like, and trust us. As they
Yes.
say, they're
Hmm.
just looking for that final validation. So that sales process really isn't difficult once they've made the call, because that first step, it's like anything else. If you've got an addiction or whatever, that first step is self-discovery, knowing that I have a problem and knowing I can't solve it by myself and I need help. So by the time they call us, they've seen enough of our material to know that we have a plethora of solutions. And so they're just kind of looking for that final validation. How does this work? They usually ask, is there a contract? And once we say no, they're like, okay, when can we start? So
Yeah.
we've dropped all the guards, answer their questions. Most important thing for us is we listen. That's it. We just listen. Sometimes they just want to be heard.
Hmm.
They just want to cry. I've had entrepreneurs come in this room actually, and I have to get tissues because they're done, but they can't quit. They've got too much vested in the company. They've got too many liabilities. And for most small businesses, they would never get a job that would pay them enough to get them out of debt from this company. So they have to make it work. Someone's
Yeah.
depending on them. So we listen and then we get to work.
Yeah, and I love that personal touch. So I would imagine that one of the rewarding aspects of being a business coach is really helping, seeing your client's business grow,
Oh yeah.
and also helping them overcome the various challenges that they're facing. But let's put revenue and the bottom line aside. What other um, metrics do you use to measure, the value that you're delivering to your clients?
So in our assessment, the 20 to 25 questions, we
Hmm.
specifically ask them, what is the first thing you're looking to get from a business coach? And what do you expect as an outcome down the road?
Hmm.
So we're using their metric. So for some, well, I will say very rarely has anyone put money as their end goal. It's usually more time with their family.
Hmm.
If they're 65 years old and they've got dad's business that they've taken over, second generation business, they're like, my business isn't worth anything without me. My kids don't want it because the reason the kids don't usually want it today is because their dad missed out on their lives. So they don't want to
Yeah.
miss out on their kids' lives. So they're like, I don't want it.
Hmm.
I don't want that headache. So all of a sudden, they're coming to us saying, I know I've only probably got about 5 more years in me to be able to work like this, and the business isn't worth anything without me. So I got to be able to sell it, find a solution, do something. And so they all come to us with a different outcome that they're looking for, but it's usually never money. It's usually something along those lines that I just mentioned: less hours, just a relief. Some of them, they're like, if I could just find one good employee, I'd be happy. I'd feel like
Hmm.
that was a success, because that's kind of I'd say that's one of the biggest challenges right now for most small business owners is they say, I can't find good employees. Well, for us, that's usually because they're not a good company. They're usually, the business owner, like I said, is required to be there. He or she has all the information up here. She or he is the dictator in the business. Everybody's always having to wait on him or her to tell them what to do. And so good employees don't want to work for that kind of company.
Hmm.
They want to, when I go to a company, if I were submitting an application, tell me what you expect out of me. What are the rules, the guidelines, the systems, the processes? What are some metrics that you want me to hit if it's in sales or marketing, whatever it is? And I'll do it. But I'm not going to come in there and figure out your company for you.
Yeah.
So,
I would liken that to, being on a ship without a captain, right? That's just out in the open
exactly.
water, and the
Yes.
waves are just kind of, you're going with the waves.
Yes.
A pretty scary scenario to find yourself in. Great. Um, Sorry, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Nope.
Oh, shifting gears a little bit to competition. So I again went to Google and took a look at, the business coaching industry. And as of last year, 2022, it was valued at about $15 billion from a revenue perspective.
Hmm.
And there are approximately more than 71,000 business coaches worldwide. Could you maybe speak a little bit to how you, as a business owner, as a business coach, to some of the things that you have done, um, to keep a head above shoulders of your competition, right? How do you? It's a saturated market, one could argue, but how do you clear out all the noise and stand out in such a crowded market space?
It's not as easy as it sounds,
Hmm.
but we refer back to our purpose statement. Are we doing things that will help a business owner, that will give them a voice of hope? I have my own podcast, Small Business Pivots, and it's been on our radar for like 3 or 4 years, but we never could find a niche. Like we didn't want to be just another business podcast. We wanted to hit a mark. And this on Small Business Pivots, it's like, okay, what is one thing that after we build or form a relationship with a small business owner, what's kind of that first thing they want to do? Because most business owners that come to us, they're usually doing less than half a million a year.
Hmm.
And so once we kind of get their shop in order, if you will, their first goal is like, I want to be $1 million business. I was like, oh, that's something that everybody wants to do, have $1 million business. So, can we help business owners with this podcast now? Absolutely. We can help share, talk to people that have hit the $1 million mark or more, and have them share the pivots they made to get over that hump, to get past that where they're stuck. And so, we always take that approach in everything we do. And I think that's really what sets us apart. We're not trying to be the next Tony Robbins or any of those. We're trying to be bought. Like we're here for the business owner. We don't care if our name is known or not, to be honest. If we're impacting people, small
Hmm.
businesses, especially after COVID, since so many people got laid off, they're starting businesses and we're like, oh, now we're really needed. Now our services are really needed because here's so many people that got laid off. They're tired of working for corporate America. They're tired of working for these horrible companies. So they go out and start their own, and then they find out it's not as easy as they thought. And
Right.
we're like, if we can help those small businesses succeed, that's all we care about is just helping people.
Yeah. It's easy to bite off more than you can chew, right? And
Yeah.
I think even just if you look on social media today, everybody's an entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
It's become
And
such,
everybody's a coach, it
yeah,
seems
uh,
like.
it's just become one of those buzzwords, and you're like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think we don't necessarily understand, what's actually required to be
Yeah.
successful in that space. Um, so you offer your coaching services in a variety of formats and forums, right? So we're talking online courses, masterminds, networking events, personal one-on-one coaching. Um, all of these are effective and practical in their own right, but let's just say your life depended on it. Which one of those would you pick as either your favorite or the most effective?
Ooh. Whichever one helps the most people.
Hmm.
So when I kind of left the entrepreneur world to start coaching, I was doing one on one coaching only. And I just didn't feel like I was impacting enough people because, I'm helping onesies and twosies, per week. And there's only so many hours in the week. That's when Boss evolved. I believe we're going on 2 years in the Boss organization. And I'm like, okay, not every business can afford a business coach, not a personal business coach. So how can we help more people. And those are the channels that we chose, was the podcast, the online course, the mastermind groups. So price ranges of all kinds. Right now, honestly, my favorite part is the podcast
Mm-hmm.
because I can teach, I can educate, people pick my brain. People pull out of me things that I forgot that I knew from experience, or maybe a business that I worked with that, oh yeah, I remember they did this. And so we're helping more people through the podcast. Through podcasts though, there's no revenue, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
people are going to call us from the podcast. So podcast, as you know, you have your own, it takes time. There's a lot of man hours involved in the all the setup, the recording, then the editing, and then the uploading and all that stuff. So I would say whichever one impacts the most people. So I like group coaching the most, but I also like that one-on-one because now it's more relational than a group,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're working one on one, you get to see the tears. You get to see the next time they come and they've got the biggest grin on their face. And I'm like, something happened. Tell me, tell me. Like they can't wait to tell me this big thing happened. So it's gratifying in different ways. But what I really care about is helping as many people as I can.
With so much going on, the different courses, the different formats, forums that you have, types of clients, how have you gone about structuring a team to help you keep everything in place? Yeah, and I know you mentioned earlier that you have about 13 coaches, all with with various skill sets. How did you go about putting that team together?
So it's one of the things that we coach our business owners to do, and that's called an organizational chart. So it's basically what your company looks like 5 to 10 years from now. Because the first thing we start with any business, and we did this our same. So I'm answering your question of how we did it and how we
Hmm.
coach other businesses to do it, is you've got to know where you're going. You got to have that North Star, like I said earlier. Then you got to put together kind of the structure. So if I want to be a $10 million company in 2 years, what are the roles, ROLES? What are the roles that you're going to need to be able to hit that mark?
Hmm.
And so you break those down into an organizational chart, kind of show where they fit in the hierarchy of the business. And then you write out the description and the function of what that role looks like. So as you grow, as you scale, when you're, I'd say, when you've run out of time as the business owner, we go back to our org chart and we go, okay, where am I spending my time that someone else could, where we could hire somebody? And so that's how we've grown our team, is just through that process that we coach other business owners to use as well.
So earlier, with the definition I shared of what a business coach is, the definition alluded to business coaches being professional mentors. Who's been your business mentor throughout your journey?
So I've had quite a few business coaches, and I still have coaches to this day. And that's another qualifying question if someone's searching for a coach,
Hmm.
is have you owned a business? How big are they? How long do they last? And then do you have coaches yourself? Because a good business coach believes in coaches so much that we invest in, because there's things we don't know for business as well. So we're still learning. So
Hmm.
my first one of my first business coaches, Martin Holland, he's not a nationally known coach, but he's in Oklahoma where I'm at. And he is still my mentor, one of my mentors to this day. And he's the one that actually, I think the first time he met me, he said, "What book are you reading?" That's kind of a common question that coaches ask because they want to know kind of like where your focus is.
Sure.
And I said, "Well, the last time I read was to my son, Cat in the Hat." He didn't find that funny. I did, but he was being serious. And so he told me, he said, "Okay, read this book called The Compound Effect. It's by Darren Hardy." And so I did, and that completely, now I can't put books down. That was probably 15 years ago,
Hmm.
and I'm just an avid reader now. That changed my whole perspective on life, about it's not the big things you do, it's the little things that you do consistently.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of sums up the book. So I would say between Martin Holland, Darren Hardy, those are two of the people that I probably follow the most.
Any other books that you could recommend just off the top of your head?
E Myth.
Hmm.
I'm still surprised today that a lot of business owners haven't even heard of that book. And
I
that's the
haven't.
one book you haven't? Okay.
No.
Well, The E Myth, it's by Michael Gerber. It's like the number one best selling book. It's sold over 2 million copies. It's called E Myth Revised now.
Hmm.
And all that is just kind of an updated version. But that's a great book. Um, oh gosh, if they want to learn about, I find that learning from other entrepreneurs' mistakes and how they overcame that is also a good channel to use as an entrepreneur. So I just had Kara Golden on my show recently. She's the founder and former CEO of Hint Water, the unsweetened flavored water
Hmm.
that's real popular right now. So there's another book she wrote called Undaunted, and that's a great book just to hear the struggles. Because like you said before, the big names, we hear their story all day long,
Sure.
and kind of gets old, not honestly. So I look for those people that aren't so known, that didn't get that number one book deal, so they're a number one bestseller, because you can really learn a lot from the grassroots startup bootstrap type entrepreneur and what they did, what they've overcome, and where they are today. And that can
Hmm.
be very inspiring. So those are a couple of books that I really like.
No, I like that. I think to your point about learning from the mistakes and experiences of everyone who's come before you, there's really
Yeah,
a wealth of knowledge and almost a roadmap on
absolutely.
which landmines to avoid.
Yes.
And I think that's a great segue into my next question, which is, as we get close to wrapping up here, um, Julius Caesar once said that experience is the best teacher,
Hmm.
and you've obviously amassed a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experience, through your own entrepreneurial journey, and also just helping other small business owners. So I'd be curious to hear what you think about, if for someone who's just getting started, thinking about starting their own business, or maybe currently managing their own business right now, um, given the choice of either going at it alone and just figuring it out on their own, you know, making the mistakes, starting messy, versus potentially hiring a business coach, if it's within their means, which path would you offer, or would you recommend that somebody take?
So this sounds biased, but
Sure.
I would go the business coach route all day
Sure.
long.
Yeah.
There's if I well, we'll just say I wish I had done that. I don't think I hired my first coach for probably the first 8 to 10 years. And the things that I learned, of course, they were valuable, and I teach that to others. In fact, I always say my greatest lessons learned are from failures.
Hmm.
So I'm glad I experienced those. But man, if I would have had a coach from day one, there's a lot of stuff that I just wouldn't have, stupid mistakes that I wouldn't have made. For instance, they can guide you. I see so many small business owners investing in the wrong things. In fact, they're just pouring their money down SEO, videos. I mean, we're talking startups. And I'm like, no, you need to hire an accountant,
Hmm.
hire a bookkeeper first. Most small business owners will go at it trying to do their own books. And I'm like, first of all, you don't have time to navigate through QuickBooks or whatever you're using, Zoho or any of the other platforms. And secondly, you don't know what you're doing. So, and then thirdly, you're costing yourself money, because accountants can save you money on deductions and expenses and categories and things like that. A business coach would have told me that on day one.
Hmm.
Instead of you investing on this, he also or she would have told me, you, because this we make so many mistakes as a startup, and most of the time we're so into the, I'm going to create a social media channel, I'm going to try to get this to go viral, I'm going to do videos, I'm going to do this stuff, and I'm like, that's all long-term stuff.
Hmm.
That's stuff that doesn't pay off today. What you need to be focused on as a startup is sales. Like 80% of your time should be sell, 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 sell. The way you sell is you reach out. You reach out to friends, you reach out to family, you reach out to past connections at your past job. Tell them, they may not be a prospect for you or a lead, but they might know somebody that is. And so
Hmm.
you just sell. And I had a business coach on day one they would have told me those things, and I would have skipped all this other stuff I was doing that wasn't going to pay the bills. I look back and I wonder how I even made it, to be honest. Like I just have no clue. If I would have had a coach, he would have told me those few things and I would have gone, at least I have direction.
Yeah.
You know, direction is key to success. I also would have learned clarity. I also would have learned kind of one of the big words, consistency. You know, you got to show up consistently.
Hmm.
If you do just one thing every day, you're getting better every day, just like Darren Hardy says in the compound effect. So that's the value of a coach for a startup. And so to me, if you think you can't afford one, I promise you, you're wasting more money than what it would cost to hire a business coach or a mentor, or just reach. If you don't have any funds at all, if you don't even have a sale, reach out to a local business person.
Hmm.
When I first started, the newspaper was a big thing. And so they always had kind of a business person feature of the week on the Sunday paper in the
Hmm.
business section. I literally reached out to those people. They're very proud and honored to be featured in the big newspaper. Secondly, they want to help people, they want to share their story. I never was turned down by any business person, and I didn't know these people. I just said, hey, I saw your article in the paper. Congratulations. Looks like you've had a lot of success. And one of the guys, the very first one that I met, Barry Tapp, he said, he gave me his personal book um, that somebody signed for him. And then he signed it over to me. And he said, I'm not going to tell you the successful things I did. I'm going to tell you where I messed up. So, and I found out that that was more important than here's things you do, because there's enough of that information out there. There's enough books that tell you, get you pumped up, personal development, business development, but it's those things that you don't know that you mess up the biggest. When I didn't have an accountant, because I was trying to do it myself,
Hmm.
and a couple of years after I started the business, I got in horrible trouble with the IRS, the
Hmm.
Oklahoma Tax Commission, because I wasn't doing things right. They don't care that you don't know. Right? They
Sure.
care that you pay your taxes correctly. Or, and I mean, it was you talk about a compound effect. I started getting letters of penalties, interest on things that I didn't even know I was supposed to be filing. So had I invested in a business coach rather than the other stupid things I would have saved myself all that money, saved a lot
Yeah.
of money.
No, that's great, and I think it ties back quite nicely to the analogy you shared of going to the doctor when you're in pain, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think self-diagnosis is not going to get you very far.
No. And
It's
neither is the internet.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
there's
exactly.
so much information out there that is so invalid, wrong. I watch, YouTube. I listen to podcasts, and I'm like, oh my goodness, why would he say that or she say that? Like that is so wrong, but they're doing it for their own self, you know, public promotion.
Hmm.
Even the internet, don't believe everything you see on the internet. I know a lot of people, obviously successful, very successful entrepreneurs, drive these big fancy cars. They get asked often by these, I mean, I call them kids or younger generation that's trying to be a YouTube sensation. Hey, I'll pay you $1,000 if you'll let me have a photo shoot with your car.
Hmm.
That's every day. So, you can't believe everything you see on the internet. So that
No,
interaction one on one with a business coach where you have to look at them face to face, to me, that is a little more legit.
Michael, what's next for Boss?
So we have a goal of hitting 100, impacting 150,000 small business owners by the end of 2025. So that's kind of what's next. So, however, we can do that. We just got podcasts. Like I said, we just started that this year. So,
Hmm.
we've got that under our belt now. We're building out networking groups across the United States for business owners to attend. And they're more like a workshop slash network group. But we have, honestly, so our internal discussion when we talk about what's next, like where do we feel we'll be doing the right things, is when we are the Amazon for small business owners.
Hmm.
So when small business owners can come to us because they trust us, they know it's good information, They know that it helps them, and so they just keep coming back. So, like I said, I owned a marketing company. So, one of the things we did was promotional products. So, promotional products is on our list next year. We already have an attorney. We already have a CFO that's available for small business owners, because we also have a marketing coach, because I know you know this as well. In the marketing world, 90% of it is bad. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
bad product. They're misleading people. They're charging
Hmm.
people $1,000 a month for SEO, and they're not even touching a button every month. They're just sending out that invoice. In the meantime, the business owner looks back 6 months and goes, I'm not anywhere better on Google. And
Yeah.
so then they have to go through that. So we want to build products and services that actually help move the needle for small businesses. And we will feel like we've hit that mark when people are coming to us for anything they need in the small business world. Now, used to, you couldn't say you uh, be all things to all people. Well, Amazon proved that wrong, right?
Hmm.
I mean, they've got all things for all people.
People.
We
Yeah.
want to be the same thing for small business owners. We want to be that source that small businesses, not big business, small businesses are coming to us. They're stuck. They're working hard. They're not getting anywhere. So they're like, hey, I went to their master class. I'm going to go buy their book, or I'm going to go on their online course, or I'm going to go to another master class or a mastermind group that they have, because they trust the information that they're getting. They've seen it, like I said, move the needle. And so they want to come back for more.
Yeah, no, that's great. Listen, I wish you the best of luck and much success with all your future endeavors. Thank you so much for being on the show. And just for anyone that wants to reach out to you, maybe even explore some of the coaching services that you offer, or even just to connect. I know you mentioned LinkedIn, but are there any other platforms where people can find you?
Well, they can email me at michael@michaeldmorrison.com.
Hmm.
I do answer my emails. I don't have a virtual assistant for those. Or they can call me. My mobile number is 405-919-9990. I'm an open book. I will talk. I'm not going to pass you along to somebody else. You can actually talk to me.
Michael, thank you once again for being on the show. Really appreciated it. This was such an insightful conversation. So hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, James, for the opportunity. And hopefully
Yeah,
I've helped your listeners.
absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a good one.